Alright everyone, welcome back to video 7 in our video series of creating Node.js apps from beginning to end. Previously we have looked at creating a HTTP server with Node.js, we have looked at creating an Express app server with Node.js and Express, and now we're going to look at a quicker and easier and more powerful way of using Express with Express Generator. This is going to be a two-part video, part 1 and part 2, where first we're just going to walk through and explain Express Generator, and then we're going to start using it by editing some of the content within and making it our own app. So first of all, let's talk about Express Generator. What is it? Well, Express Generator is a command line tool that creates for us a skeleton project with Node and Express already set up. It also will include some basic routes for us and some debugging setup that we can use that we otherwise would have to manually set up. So it creates that for us and takes it out of the way. When creating a project, we are going to use Express Generator instead of manually just creating a folder and running npm init. So this is going to be a different setup now than we've been doing up until now. We're going to be using Express Generator to do it for us. So in order to use Express Generator, it doesn't automatically come with Express, so how do we get it? Well, just like every other package that is used with Node, we use npm to get this package. So let's go ahead and open up our terminal. That's an old terminal, so I'm just going to close that out. And that's an old terminal. And, oh, okay, this is a new terminal. So I'm just going to run npm install -g Express Generator. Okay, so you'll notice here this pretty much looks the same. npm install, we've seen that before, and then what's this -g? Well, this tells the npm to install this package globally to our global node modules instead of to any specific package. And we need to do that with Express Generator because we're not going to be using this within a package. We're going to be using this globally to create a package, to create a project, on its own. So that's why we have to use that -g flag to create that globally. So let's go ahead and run that and let npm install Express Generator for us. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and use Express Generator to create our first Express generated app. So Express Generator works by running just Express and then some options. Now the options you can provide, namely the main one you have to provide, is going to be the name for your project. So you could call it anything. We're just going to call it Express App. Now if I run this, it's going to create a project for us called Express App. However, I want to specify one more thing. I want to say my view, or view engine, really. I want to say that I want to use, sorry, I have to turn that into a flag. I want to use Pug. Pug, or Jade as it was formerly known, is a view engine that renders HTML and embedded JavaScript for us. So it's a very handy tool to use when rendering pages server side like we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and run that, and you'll see it created all these files and folders for us, and then it gives us some instructions here on how to go ahead and get set up. So we're just going to follow these instructions by doing cd Express App. So go into the project it just created, and then we're going to run npm install. And now you'll notice here we're not installing anything specific. So what are we installing? Well, remember that package.json file that we've been creating all the time, and every time we install a package it adds it to the dependencies? Well, when Express Generator created this project for us, it created a package.json with some dependencies already predefined. So when we run npm install, it's just going to go ahead and look at that package.json's dependencies and install every package that's listed there. So we could actually, before we do that, we could go ahead and look at that package.json. So I'm just going to open it up and we'll take a look at that. And you'll see here all these dependencies. So we have Pug, Morgan, HTTP errors, Express, debug, cookie parser. Now we'll go over these in just a second, but you see these dependencies and you'll see them get downloaded when I run npm install. So that's what that does. And it's going to take a little bit to install all those, so we're going to let that run. Alright, you'll see it added 120 different packages. So All right, so let's go ahead and open this entire project in our text editor so we can go ahead and start walking through it. All right, so the first thing we have right here is just a bin. What is this bin? Well, it has one file called www, and this right here is just a file generated that's going to just set up some basic debugging things like these error renderers right here, and then it's going to set our app to listen, and then it's going to bring in the actual app from our app.js down here, which app.js is the equivalent of index.js that we've been using. They just call it a different name. So they bring it in, they bring in HTTP, and they just kind of handle a lot of the boring configuration stuff for us. And we can always edit these later if we needed to, but for the most part, we're just going to leave these alone. Okay, so node modules, we've looked at that, but you'll notice here there's actually quite a few more than we've been messing with so far, because with all those dependencies, it downloaded a bunch more modules. So again, we can pretty much ignore those. Now we're going to skip down here to package.json. And we're going to see that right here, it's not running the app.js. So if I said this was the equivalent of index.js, why aren't we running it? Well, we're running this bin slash www, and if we go here, we see that this file actually imports that app from app.js, and then at the end down here, it actually sets it to listen for us. So we don't have to run the actual app. We run this special file that sets up some configuration, and then it runs the app for us. So using that same structure, we're still going to want to create our dev start script, but it's going to be a little different this time. So usually we've done just nodemon, and then we're going to change this bit to bin slash www. But instead of just this little bit right here, let's go ahead and go back to our terminal, and you notice right here that the Express generator told us to do some special thing with debug. Now what is this? Well, remember those debugging things that this file set up for us? In order to use those properly, we have to run with this bit of instruction right here. So we're just going to go ahead and copy that, and then we're going to go to our package.json and prepend our script with that command right there. Now you'll notice we're using nodemon, but we don't have nodemon installed here, so let's go ahead and install that. npm install nodemon, and we'll just let that install and run for us. So we're going to save that, and then we're going to go back and start looking at these things. So public, this is a lot of your static files, and there's not a lot in here right now. There's a style sheet, a CSS file, but there's not a lot else right here in these static files. But these are static files that you're going to be able to serve to the user if they want anything, and that's what's kept in the public folder. Routes, we looked at creating our own route modules last lesson, so we know what these are, and these you'll see are the exact setup that we used last time. Express Generator just created it for us and made our lives a little easier. Now views we haven't seen before either. What is that? Well, views, you'll see error.pug, index.pug, and layout.pug. What is .pug? Well, I remember I told you Pug is that HTML rendering engine. Well, these are HTML-like syntax that creates HTML. So instead of having to build HTML manually, this is an HTML generating language that'll create HTML DOM elements based on the indentation we use. So we can see right here, this H1 belongs to this content, and if we were to do something like this and indent that, we would see that the P tag belongs to this H1 tag, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's how the indentation works. Now what is this block and extends keywords? Well, what those are is, let's go to this layout, and we'll see that it says, okay, the doc type is HTML, then it creates the header with the style sheet and the title, and then in the body we don't have anything except this block content. Well, what is that? Well, when we go to the index.pug, we see that there's a block content here. So what happens is, with this keyword extends and then layout, it's going to extend this layout.pug, and then it's going to add on to it anything we define in the index.pug. specifically this block content. So we're specifying which block we want to define, and then we go ahead and define it down here. And this is just a variable right here that we got passed in, and this is another variable that we got passed in, and this is two different ways to use it. We can say that the whole tag equals that with this equals right here, or we can add it in the middle of a bit of text with this special syntax right here. And we're going to look at later how to pass these variables to our .pug files to render HTML for us. But that's what the views are. So now this app.js file, this is the main file. This is again still just like index.js, the brains of our app. But there's a lot more here than we've created in our last lesson on Express. So we're going to be looking at and walking through each of these and what all of this does. So this section here, what does this do? Well, this is just like in the last videos where we were importing different modules. That's all we're doing right here. We're importing different modules. This create error or from the HTTP errors will allow us to easily create errors for the development and error handling of our app during creation. Now Express, we've seen this. This is the Express module that allows us to create our app. Now path, this is a path module which one of its main functions to do is to do things like this right here, path.join, and then it takes in this special variable right here, dir name or directory name, and this basically is going to normalize your path name for whatever operating system you're on. If you don't know, the path syntax basically is different for Mac and for Windows, and so this right here is going to normalize that so there's no errors that pop up because you create an app on one OS and then run it on another OS and there's errors. This path.join avoids that for us. So that's what that module there is for. Now cookie parser, this is a package that parses cookies for the browser session. We're not going to mess with that too much in this project, but that's what that does. And Morgan, kind of a strange name, but basically what it is a logger. It's going to log out helpful and useful messages on our console as we run our server. It's going to tell us some things that are happening and just help us know what's going on under the hood a little bit. Okay, so what's this next section here? Well, we saw this last lesson where we created our index and users routers, and that's exactly what they did right here. So nothing new there, and also nothing new here. We're just creating our app object with Express's empty constructor right there. Okay, so what is this? Well, remember when I told you that we have a view engine that creates HTML for us? Well, this is where we set where all those views are located. So we're telling our app that the views are going to be located in, this just normalizes the path name, but they're going to be located in views. Okay, and now down here we're telling app that we're setting the view engine to pug, so it knows what the extension and what to do with it. Okay, now all this down here, let's walk through this. Now logger, that is, remember this logger that we created with Morgan, that's going to log out some helpful messages, and we have to tell it, okay, what type of messages do we want? Well, we want dev or development style messages. Okay, so express.json, what this does is this tells our app that we may want to, we're not going to here, but we may want to use JSON data, and this tells our app to go ahead and use that and how to use it, and that's set up in Express for us. We just have to tell it to use express.json. Now express.url encoded, also we're not going to worry about this. This is for some types of forms and push requests getting sent over. You have to do this to get the correct type of data on the server side. Now this right here, cookie parser, we already looked at that, what that was, and this is just telling the app to use it. Now this right here, app.use express.static, remember when I said that public folder, these are static, maybe static images. You're going to have a whole list of static images, and if the user wants to request that and they want to get it, well, what this does is it tells the server where those static files are located. Once again, normalizing the path for whatever OS we're on, and then telling it where it's located, like I said, in the public directory. Now these right here, we saw these last time. We're just telling the app to use the index router whenever we get a blank URL, and we're telling it to use the user's router whenever we get the user's URL. Now this is new right here. What is this? Well, this tells our app that anytime we're going to get a 404 error, that we just need to use this function right here, which is just going to accept the request, the response, and a new object called next. So what is next? Well, next, just as you can see right here, is a function that can be ran next and then do something, pass on something to the, as you probably guessed, the next function down here. So this right here is creating an error of 404 and is passing it on to the next middleware is what this is called. Anything that says .use like this is all middleware. So it's running through all this middleware. It'll run through all of this, and it hits this, it creates that 404 error, and it passes it on to the next middleware, which is down here. So down here again, we're saying, okay, we want to be able to accept an error because maybe we created an error right here. So we're going to accept that error. We're going to take in a request, response, and that next object again. We're going to set the messages. This is a special locals messages that we can use to provide some error and some error messages in development, and we're going to set that to whatever the error message was for the 404 errors, which is created by Express for us. And then we're going to set the environment type, which is development for right now, and then we're also going to set the status, which is an error status of 500, and then we're going to render this error view right here. So whenever we say res.render, it's going to look in the views because we told it that that's where we are setting all of our files or views for our web server. We put them in views. So anytime we say res.render, it's going to go ahead and check out this views folder and look for a file that's called error.pug. And there it is. And then at the very end, we just export that app that we've been creating this whole time. We export it so that this bin/www can import it, set up some configuration on it, and then run it for us. So that's what the app.js file is, and all of that does. A lot of this for this project, just this basic project that we're going to be doing, you can ignore, but now you know what everything is. And the next lesson, we're going to start editing this code and making this app our own. So I'll see you there.